Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Reviews of Tyberius Z. Of course, you know who I am, or at least I hope you do, but if you're just coming by, I'm Tyberius, and I do a lot of different content ranging from geopolitics to basically political conversations to reviews. So if you like what I'm doing, I hope you're enjoying this very much, or if you this is your first time here, I hope you do enjoy this. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of a controversial opinion. If you were here onto the YouTubes or whatever it may be that you're looking at, you're seeing that nice little thumbnail. I've got a little bit of a hot take here. That Click from 2006 is pretty underrated. Now, we can get into this here in just a second because there's some pretty good criticisms of this movie. It's an Adam Sandler movie, right? It's not going to be absolutely amazing. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But most of the time when I talk about this movie, no one seems to remember it. No one seems to care. And that actually bothers me a lot because this movie has a lot of things going on for it that really doesn't help. Of course, before all this, I would usually do an intro, a real nice video. We haven't got that yet, so if you're coming back and watching what I do, that is coming. That will be coming down the pipe. We're just not there yet. The production, we still need to get the intro and the borders and all that stuff, but we're working on it, and it'll be coming up it'll be coming up before terribly long. Anyway, excuse me. Let's get this out of the way. So, what is Click? Click is a dramatic science comedy, actually, kind of. So it's got a lot of things going on, but it's more of the dramatic comedy. It's not a romantic comedy because while there is a loving couple in that, is that they're already married. It is from 2006. It stars Adam Sandler, Henry Winkler, and I gotta remember the wife for a second. Absolute gorgeous woman. What is... I got it. I had it just a minute ago. Kate Beckinsale. Fuck! I completely dropped it. I apologize. Anyway, getting into this. Why is this movie good? Good. I want to talk about the general theme before I get into like the plot details, right? Because a lot of people that are watching my show have already kind of picked up the hint that I have a certain archetype and a story that I particularly like, and that is out of time travel, but out of placement time travel kind of thing. And I talked a little about this in my Star Trek reviews regarding like TNG, and my favorite episode is Tapestry, and they're okay. So I want to put this in perspective here. What is so good about this archetype that really sells for me, and I think should sell quite a bit for the average person as well? And that is usually when it comes to movies involving time travel, where you have to go into your own lifetime at another point, is that it reflects greatly upon the character, and thus, if you follow along with the storyline yourself, in what this movie is trying to communicate, for one, but also it's basically you have to look in the mirror for any of these characters. And so if you are an old man and you get to like go back into your your younger life, that is an incredible amount to have a retrospective into. Are you happy with where you turned out? Or if you're a young man, or maybe even in your midlife, but you kind of get fast forwarded into your older years, like what we'll talk about here in this particular plot. Are you going to be happy with that? And we're going to break into this. But the long and the short, at least for me, is that time travel plots, when you have to deal with your own lifetime, is incredibly impactful personally and emotionally for most of these characters, and usually, at least for me in the audience, I would assume. Sometimes that doesn't land right, which we'll talk about that here in just a second. Excuse me, my foot is itching like crazy. But as a general rule here, is that unless you completely botch the story for these kind of things, they should be great movies on a personal level. Things that you remember for having a personal impact upon your life. And if you don't, I'm kind of wondering if you have a soul. And that's coming from me because I've been accused of that quite a bit. I apologize for the foot. Alright, so for some reason, my stuff is screwed up. Oh, well, that'd be why. Okay, that's why. I apologize for that. For some reason, my things were goofed up. Or my chair was goofed up in its normal setting. Anyway. So, to get here, what is the plot? Let's talk about this. Why is this pretty good? All right, so Adam Sandler plays a guy named Newman. I can't remember what the hell it was. Michael Newman. Anyway, he plays a character named Michael Newman. Kate Beckinsale plays his wife. Henry Lincoln plays his dad. There's a few other characters involving, like David Hasselhoff, and a few other, faces that you'll find familiar or whatnot. So, anyway, who is Michael Newman? Well, the entire first half of the movie is more of an introduction to who this man is. And I would say that, in a general sense, he's not everyone's first choice is like, hey, this is going to be my best friend. But at least I would think if you have any kind of sympathy in your heart, you would kind of understand that this is a guy who's trying. He's got a family, he's got kids, one boy, one girl. He's got a job, doing what he can. And it looks like he's doing all right for himself. He's got a nice house, got a nice wife, kids, all that kind of thing. He's trying. And it kind of opens up into him. He's got a project. He's just finishing out his first one. And, he had to scramble to get it done. There's some tension and some conflict with the wife because of this. And the moment that he gets that one done, his boss even puts even more onto him to where it's just like, hey, man, I want you to close out the deal with this. I want you to, design this particular building. He's an architect, by the way. So the long and the short here is that he's trying to basically do right by his family and do right by his boss, make sure he can work his way up in what he's doing so that he can provide well for his family and give, and I believe he even says this, is like, I want to give my family a better life than I ever dreamed of as a kid. There's actually a point where this is referenced just a little bit, but they don't actually do this very well, which is actually one of my criticisms. But, alright, this movie, I don't even know if it would be made with the tone policing of our good friends on the left today and the social justice warriors. It's not nearly as bad as some people think it was, but there's definitely some cultural affinity, or I'm sorry, not affinity. There's some cultural indifference, or I don't know. Like there is a scene where he is talking to foreign dignitaries of some sort or another. The first one is with but what's the soon to be Middle Eastern kingdom of some sort. It's it doesn't go over very well, and I can see where a lot of people would be offended. And it's played for jokes. It's 2006, right? That's what it's going to be, and we're not going to act like the Middle East was on everybody's happy list during 2006 anyway. But as far as where that is that it does come off as culturally insensitive to a large degree in that. And then also he'll have the second project, which is for a Japanese firm. That'll come off there as well. And it's not even the characters that come off of that in that regard, nearly as much as it is the movie itself. It portrays the Japanese businessman as very crude. And so I could totally get where some of these things are not your thing. And then also the boss himself, which is David Hasselhoff, has like a ring of beautiful women secretaries kind of thing, but it doesn't go over very well in the regard that I wouldn't say it goes over very well in the regard that it doesn't do well for putting a good light into women in any point in this movie. Like, you don't really see a strong, capable woman character. And I could totally get where that would bother quite a lot of people. So I wanted to get that out of the way, just because there are some things where even I'm not going to say that this is an amazing movie by far. But what I want to get into is the nooks and the weeds of these characters. So I already talked about Michael Newman, which is Adam Sandler's character. He's flawed. He has issues. He's got to juggle all his responsibilities between his kids and his wife and his work. And even his older family, where they come over, and he's just like, oh, I don't want to do this. And he has to make choices and prioritize and figure all this out. And the movie kind of lays him out that he largely will side more with work because he's trying to get promoted. He wants to be, if you will, a big shot. And they kind of make fun of him for it a little bit. But to a large degree, he is trying. And I can't fault him for most of the things he will do in this movie because so many people are like that. But there's definitely some meta messages that I want to get in towards the end here. But about the first half is largely establishing who this character is, identifying his relationships. He's not super warm to people, right? And it doesn't really explain why. Like, why is he so fervent on chasing it outside of the fact that he just wants to be, a bigger guy? But, okay, so what happens here in this plot and this character is that he's just complaining, right? And he's like, he's got the joke is he's got like 30 remotes in his house, and like one of them like controls the car, another one opens the garage door, but he can't ever figure out which one. And he just complains because he's like, you know what, I don't have a lot of control of my life, and he does the thing that many people do. It's like, I want a more say in my life and how it's run and all this and that. Which is perfectly human, perfectly understandable, and I greatly sympathize to that. And so he's basically literally just almost complaining to God, if you will. You know, give a guy a break, you know, why can't I have a control for, like, literally anything and everything? Well, he goes to Bed Bath & Beyond to get a universal remote control. I don't know why, like, you know, it showed there in the movie that, like, what is it, like, Circuit Center or whatever else was closed. I don't know why you think Bed Bath & Beyond would have a universal remote control, but I guess it's for plot convenience because it kind of goes full circle at the end. And I might remind me, chat, which no one is chatting right now, to come back to that if you want to. Because I think it was largely done there on purpose. So, without further ado, let's move into what happens. So, he goes into... into Bed Bath & Beyond. He gets beyond and way beyond, which the movie actually plays this as a joke. But he meets a character named Morty, who looks like this kind of like techno wizard and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I think I got something for you. He gets Adam Sandler, nice little remote, looks kind of nice, pretty basic, but it looks like it works pretty well. And it's just a universal remote control. At first, he's using it just like any normal universal remote control is, but suddenly, he gets to the point where he's frustrated, and he's looking at his dog, and the dog keeps barking. He's like, just shut up, dude. And then he just, by sheer, I don't know, oddity, grabs the remote and starts trying to turn down the volume of the dog. But it works. And suddenly, listening on lurking mode, hey, good to see you, Osiris. Definitely check out me and Osiris on Mask Off. Anyway. What happens is he's like, oh crap, no, there's no way, right? So he goes outside to take the dog out, and he's sitting there like, all right, cool. The dog's going to take like 20 minutes to do his business because he always does. And then he's just like, all right, let's see if this happens again. He tries to fast forward the dog, and he does. And the dog does his business, then comes inside and does all this other stuff. You know, and he's just like, oh, you know, God powers. But then at first he thinks he's being fooled, so he goes back to Morty. It's just like, hey, I want America's Game Show. I don't know how you got my dog in on it. And some of this is actually legitimately funny. Some of it, not so much. But I can totally get if this isn't your kind of taste. But going forward with this is that he finds out, you know, progressively that this remote has different powers, and you can do a lot of different things with it. You can use it as a translator, which he'll do on the Japanese dignitaries. He will do this on he will do this to his friend, where like he literally puts like picture within picture so he can watch another channel while she's bitching at him. It's hilarious. Some things are funny, or you know, just a really cute gimmick. But here's where it kind of hits. Is that the remote starts recording preferences, right? So every time that you hit fast forward or you mute somebody or whatever, it kind of learns from that and it will do it for you. And he starts losing control of his life. And here, as an example, like one of the things that you would think a lot of people wouldn't do is that he, you know, his wife basically is, you know, wanting some action. And he's not really feeling it at one point. He's busy with work. He's tired of it, you know, that kind of thing. And he basically fast forwards through sex. And I don't know how you guys are, or you ladies are, but I mean, that's something I can actually sympathize with. I don't have a huge sex drive outside of like when I really have the urge for it. But usually my partners have always been the type that wanted it more than me. And like, I totally empathize with the fact, it's like, I don't want to do this. Like, we just had sex yesterday. Leave me the fuck alone. Yeah, like, I totally can empathize with some of these things, like wanting to fast forward through that, or just be like, all right, I don't want to be conscious for this. Leave me alone. And this movie kind of gets into this, where He fast forwards through that, and it's like, oh, she's not very happy. He's supposed to be happy, but what the remote does, and it's implied here shortly after, that anytime he fast forwards where he isn't consciously there and interacting and being engaged, is that he's kind of on autopilot. And what that means is not necessarily that it's implied the lights are on but nobody's home. It's not quite that subtle. What it is that any preference that he's demonstrated to the remote will execute. So if he's indifferent towards people, it will just automatically default him into doing that. And it basically removes his individual choice from individual moments and just goes along as the summation of what he has done before while he's had the remote. And so what happens is that when he gets sick, it starts fast-forwarding through his sickness, and it'll do that repeatedly. When he's in line for a promotion, he'll fast-forward through that, and that is a huge deal. It basically fast-forwards him through sex, like twice, if I remember right. And so what it does is that basically the remote learns, and because of this, it actively gets... The remote learns, and if through that it actively starts taking over his life because of his preferences that the remote has. And there's a meta conversation within that of whether the remote did him justice or not, but for the sake of the character, he largely goes along with it, and I kind of understand it. The remote seems to have some really, mega powers, and it's hard to question, godlike powers for a lot of people. So, anyway, what happens is that... he fast forwards through a couple things, and he realizes that, it's just like he's not where he wants to be. He fast forwards through work on the weekend, he fast forwards through a cold, he fast forwards through a lot of this stuff. But then he's like, all right, I want to get to this next spot. I want to get promoted. And he's really upset because he works really hard on that second project that we were talking about, and he pretty much knocks it out of the park, largely because of a translation unit, funny enough. He largely knocks it out of the park. He's basically promised a promotion for doing that to become partner, but then his boss kind of screws him over by like, oh yeah, well you got to do a few more things first, as some bosses are due, and he basically tries to fast forward to his next promotion, and it's largely implied that he'll be promoted within a year. Well, good thing for him that actually works out, but he does get promoted. But he skips through an entire year of his life, or the better part of one. And things aren't going well. In the meantime, while he's been on autopilot, he basically fast forwards and he finds out that while his business career is doing well, is that his family life is falling apart. His wife is dragged him off to marriage counseling, in which the fight that he skipped before repeats, and he skips this fight too, and so he's not even in that. And he comes off to his wife is incredibly insensitive, isn't listening. And his life is, if you kind of get the point here, his life is spinning out of control, where anything that he didn't like, or a demonstrated preference that he didn't want to be a part of, he'll now get fast forward with it, and the remote will show indifference to the people that he's interacting with. So there's a quick bit, and this movie kind of picks up speed really quickly as it goes from slow to faster to faster to faster, and you just kind of, this character Michael Newman loses control of his life in a very fundamental way, because it's not long after he fast forwards a year, because he is getting promoted, that it's said, oh hey, there's going to be another promotion where he's going to be like chairman of the company or whatever, and without even when he's trying to stop it, the remote automatically executes the command. And this time it isn't a year, it's 10 years. And he wakes up, and he's in a completely different place. Looks like he's doing really well for himself. Looks like he's very wealthy. But he wakes up to a call that he's been promoted to chairman or CEO or what have you, because I think it's implied that David Hasselhoff dies. I don't remember for sure. But what happens is he wakes up and he realizes that he's not had the life that he wanted at all, right? And he's basically going through the shock. He's put on a lot of weight. He's been divorced. He's not been able to watch his kids grow up, and his kids look completely different. His son has put on quite a bit of weight himself. His daughter is like 16, 15, 16, and is developing into a woman, and he missed all that. But on top of that is that she's a teenager, wanting to do teenage thing, and he has basically an infarction as a result of that. And I mean, I'm not a dad, but I can understand that. I really can. So it goes about this part where, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but what happens is that he gets to this point where he's there, and he's not liking it, but his life is still spinning out of control to where he's jumping because he gets sick, or one other thing. I can't remember all the triggers that made him jump, but executing what behaviors he had demonstrated before, the remote keeps jumping him, and he literally lives the better part of the later years of his life, like 30 years of his later on life. He lives in probably a couple of days, if not a week. And it's very traumatic for him in regards that he loses, complete control over what every little decision that he's made. He only gets a few chances to make any decisions at all because of the remote. And what happens is that he's able to kind of go back into his life, just like see what he's done, and that's where it really comes apart for him. Because at one point, I think it's when he gets sick a second time after becoming like chairman, he skips through that, and he has realized that his father has died. And, he realizes that his father's died, and he never got to say goodbye. He doesn't even remember it. He doesn't know anything that's happened during his whole life. He just forgets. And so where it goes is that he's able to rewind but not be there. He can like third person it, if you will, in the room, and basically his dad comes to visit him at his work. He's a big shot, and his son is working with him now, and his son looks like he's doing very well for himself, all things considered. But Grandpa comes by, and he's just like trying to be a family man, and Newman, or Sandler's character, shuns him away. He's like, I got work to do, leave me alone. Because, this character on autopilot largely only cares about his work. And it gets so bad that Henry Winkler will act, and he'll literally leave the room in tears, because he's like, hey, look, I'll show you this quarter trick that, is played up a lot in the movie. He's just trying to get the family together for, like, one last hurrah. And it doesn't work. And Newman has to watch all of this as his autopilot does that. And, for a second he questions it. He's like, I would never do this, that kind of thing. But basically he just can't bring himself to argue against the power of the remote, because the remote does seem to do exactly what Morty describes that it will do. And so he has to contend with the fact that he watches his father cry, and he actually has to the only thing he can get to say goodbye is able to rewind and hug him, but he actually can't interact with his father because he's already dead. And between seeing Henry Winkler cry and like the distress that Sandler actually admits, is that I'm welling up a little bit here just thinking about it, because it's an incredibly impactful moment, because he's lost control of his life. He's basically just riding on the seat of it, and he didn't even have the chance to say goodbye to his father. And I mean, putting me into that situation, I would be completely emotionally distraught, to the point I don't know if I could function. Maybe they should have gave a little more time to do that scene where he has to accept that his dad is gone, but like he can't do anything to it, or he can't do anything about it. And then of course you go to find out that he goes to where his grave is, and Morty shares that he's an angel, but he's not just any angel, he's the angel of death. And it's not implied why exactly Morty is the angel of death, but it's largely kind of implied that his job is to kind of, basically carry people along from one life to the next. And you kind of get the sense the reason the remote's there, I think it's implied, but it probably should have been stated a little bit, is that it's basically a way for Morty to have Newman dead quicker, if you will, if that makes any sense. And so it basically puts the literal Grim Reaper there as a whole thing. By the way, Morty is Christopher Walken. I didn't even put that up there, but it's funny. And he plays a pretty interesting character, a little bit crass, but hey, whatever. But yeah, there is that scene. He goes, they have an exchange. He's basically mortified at what all he's dealing with, and he feels like his life's largely been cheated and stolen from him. And he gets to a point where he's like, hey, take me somewhere happy. And it's the last moment he really gets of happiness in what will be his life, is that he's suddenly at his son's wedding, and he doesn't even know it because he's just fast forwarded to it. But he tries to do the right thing for the little moments that he can. He dances with his ex-wife whenever their song comes on. He tries to be very friendly to his son and his future wife and his mother, and he's just he has to reflect upon all the things that happened where his dad isn't there. His mother is very old at that point, and he's completely distraught over it. But he's just trying to make the best of it because it's all he has. And this is where you start seeing this character make a fundamental change. And it's the whole point of the movie, is that when you see something like this, when you have to look in the mirror, and this is one of my things that I really get caught up on with a lot of people when it comes to storytelling, is characters or people, when they have to look in the mirror, what do you see? And I really want to hit this really hard at the end of it, because it's incredibly impactful for me, and I think I wish it was a lot more for people too, but I'll talk about that. Can you deal with the reflection in the mirror that you see? And so, dancing with his wife, gets sick again because he pops an artery. Fast forward, he's in the hospital, and what happens here, and I'm paraphrasing over a lot of stuff, and I apologize for that, but watch the movie if you want. He's sick, he's in bed, he's hooked up to some stuff, and what happens is that his son is telling him next to his bed that he has to cancel his honeymoon because there's a business deal falling through. He's got to do damage control, and Sandler's character, Michael, is doing everything in his power to tell his son, no, go on your honeymoon, because he's learning from this mistake. He's seeing the consequences of a business-driven lifestyle in front of him, where he doesn't have a family anymore, or he's estranged from his family, and he didn't get to say goodbye to his own father. A lot of these things, he passed up on all these opportunities, and so, excuse me, he has a choice. His son clearly isn't really listening to him because, his son's even making responsibilities. And it's kind of implied but not stated that his son's might be starting down the road that he did, where he's more worried about the business than he is worried about his family. And he has a choice. Michael has a choice. He can run out there and try to stop him and communicate to his son, hey, look, no, you have to do this or that, or you have to go on this trip. And he does. He makes the choice to run out, and it's implied that he will kill him, or that it will kill him because he's hooked up to a bunch of machines that are keeping him alive. I don't know exactly what it is, but I don't think that's important. What it largely is just important is that he has a life and death choice to make. He can try to stick around. He can try to build himself back up for whatever little time he has, or he can make the sacrifice to tell his son that, don't repeat the same mistakes that he has in a different way. Family comes first. Go on your honeymoon. So he runs out of the hospital, or more he slouches because he's not really physically fit at this point, and he's basically because without the machines he's near death. And Sandler does pretty good at actually acting this scene outside of the fall down, but it's a little silly. But this actually is a pretty impactful scene for what you're going through with, at least for me. Dramatic music in the rain, swells up. Cliche as fuck, but on the other side is that it does this scene very, very well. Where Michael is screaming at his son. He's collapsed. He's in the rain. He's in the street in the rain, and he's about 40 feet down, maybe even further, maybe 100. And it's just he catches it out of the corner out of his eye, the son does, and he runs over to him, and he's able to impart basically his final words. And Michael has no idea. Like, Michael's pretty convinced that this is, his last stand. Like, this is the only choice he still has left to make in his life because, this will be the end for him. And that's something empathetic for me. That really kicks, is that he had one choice. That's all he had. And he made a choice where he's like, I won't let my son make the same mistakes. Wow, I'm getting torn up on this. But no, this is some really impactful stuff because, I'm not a father, but I know how my father is, and like he wishes the best for me, and I would hope that I would like do that for my kids as well, in a fundamental way, and like that pulls on my heart a lot. Is that you want to see your kids do well, you want to see them make the choices and learn from your mistakes, so they don't have to do it too. Like he will basically lay down his life to impart that. And it's not really implied whether he gets that message through or not, but it's not really relevant. Because Newman's character's arc isn't for his kid nearly as much as it is for him. Because when he dies, he wakes up in a bed in Bed Bath & Beyond. And the cycle basically comes full circle. And for a minute he thinks is that, I just had a bad dream or whatever. But he's learned something from it. And he goes home and he's just like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to fucking kiss my boss's ass for all this when I've got this wonderful family that he does see quite a lot of. His father really cares about him to the point where he cries leaving. His mother clearly loves him. His wife, even after 10 years, like, many years of being divorced, clearly still cared about him. His kids, like his daughter, spent something. It's implied like she spent 30 hours at the hospital waiting for him to wake up. And his kid is implied as being competent and capable during the scene where it's like, hey man, look at your kid's proposal. It's great. And he's sitting like Newman's character in basically astral form. Is able to look at that, and he's able to like, hey, my kid's really good, and basically what happens is that I'm scotching over some stuff, and a lot of this because I'm a little mentally frayed, but Newman realizes that he largely hates himself, and that's particularly the scene where his dad dies, because it's a two-part scene. It shows how powerful his kid is, and that his kid has become his own man, and that he's capable, he's competent, he can do things. Because it's like he worked out and lost weight in a natural way, where Michael had like a tummy tuck operation, shit like that. And it's also implied that Michael won't even look at his kid's work outside of just hey, look, do the bare basics, maximize profit, do the business motto. But his kid's like, hey, look, I can do with a little more money, I can do all this beautiful thing. And you can't really see it on screen, but Michael is very impressed with this in his astral form, looking at that. And he sees, Grandpa rolling in, Henry Winkler, that whole exchange there. And he literally, it doesn't really focus on this moment as much as it should have, actually. Because this is the make or break scene of this movie, is that Michael doesn't look at himself and say it, or like it's not shown, but it really isn't. It's kind of reading a little bit between the lines that you get the sense that he hates who he is, and he hates what decisions his life has led to. If they probably would have extended that scene by like 3 minutes, done a little bit more regarding the father and him leaving, maybe like him turning around and like looking at his astral form, like I hate you, like. This is not what I wanted, that kind of thing. Just poured out a little bit more emotion, a little bit more drama. This movie, I think, would have stood out. I think that's probably the flaw here, is that when it really needed to hit, it does hit, but it doesn't hit enough. It doesn't really act and show everything that it needed to. And it's not that it couldn't have. This movie's not that long. It's like an hour and 40 minutes. Even if you had stretched it a little bit longer, it wouldn't hurt in any way if you added more, particularly more impactful details when it came to that. And so, at least where I am with that is that Newman's character goes full cycle, and he's back in his old life. He's a dad. His kids are they're still kids under the age of 10, and he has an opportunity basically to do it over again. And it's largely implied that he learned from it. And it's just like, oh, well, it's a bad dream. And then all of a sudden, he's planning, he's doing all this stuff, and then the remote shows back up. And it's got a note attached to Morty, hey, do the right thing. And this time he doesn't touch the remote, and he throws it away. So, full circle's complete. Movie, rolls to credits. But it has a lot of impactful things that I want to get into. Some of this I didn't even get into in the review. It's amazing how much this movie has going for it that people really don't see or talk about or remember. Because it's got a number of themes. Number one is that how much people fast forward through their life. They're always looking at the further away point, right? Like what's coming down the pipe, and they're not really worried about what's in the moment. And I think that's absolutely true. That's a massive criticism that I wish people would have remembered quite a bit. That's implied, is how much people fast forward through their lives. And what isn't really talked about, and I wish that would have been, is how much people are actually on autopilot. And I'm going to do my whole anti-human, like, I hate people spiel here for a second, but this is one of the things that I really don't like about people. And there's been some studies on this about how much people use their inner monologue and how much the people think in the moment about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And some people are just, more active than others. I won't get into that. But what I will get into is how much people do not really seem to care about the integral actions of what they're doing every day. And that weighs out, because every little decision that you have in life multiplies in perpetuity. Because I'm going to get philosophical, but this is why I kind of get in this. When I make a decision to be mean or nice to somebody, that decision can echo in eternity. That decision doesn't stop with just that interaction. It can continue on and continue on and continue on. As an example, if I decide to be nice to somebody, or if I'm feeling, I just happen to be nice to somebody, that can fundamentally change their day. That day makes them happier or nicer, or, even if it's maybe just that one moment in that one person's life when they need to pick up and somebody's there to, to be kind to them, that restores their faith in humanity in a way that can fundamentally change the trajectory of a person's life. And if that happens, how many people are affected by that? And people don't really think about this at all. And look, I'm not going to say that I'm nice. I understand the power of this, and I'm still an asshole. So, I'm not preaching here to be like, hey, yo, always be nice, always be kind. There's some people that are assholes you shouldn't be kind to, in my honest opinion. But there's a moment where you have the choice. Hey, is this person being mean and cruel because they are, hurt, or are they just mean and cruel? And we all have a choice each and every moment to figure out how we're going to treat people and how that reflects upon us. And I wish the movie had talked a lot more about that, because there's a huge bit there that really could have tore into, which I'm huge on, is how much people don't make the choices. They just run through it, and sometimes they will ignore, they will forget, they will not empathize. And I'm seeing. Look, I'm going to sound like a massive hypocrite on a lot of these things. The more that some people get to know me, because I'm generally not very nice to a lot of people, and that's not because I hate. Well, okay, it's not necessarily that I want everyone to be bad, nearly as much as that I have a disdain for humanity, because they don't meet a lot of standards, and to some degree, I don't meet that standard. But I try to some degree. I try to figure out who I'm going to bring into my life and bring into my circle, and who I think is worthy of being treated with my love, admiration, and respect, versus who is just okay and who is terrible. Because if you give an example, if you're someone I think that's terrible, I probably don't talk to you in the regards that I'm not going to sit there and exchange 30 minutes of calling each other a piece of shit. I'm going to sit here and hit the mute button, the block button, and not engage with you, because you're not deserving of my attention. You're not deserving of my respect or my dignity. If you're okay, well, I'll just deal with that. And I'll try to, that's the people I try to be kinder to, that I'm working on in my own personal life and my own personal growth, is that I'm jaded. I feel like people have hurt me in a lot of ways. That carries over into a lot of the actions and temperaments that I have towards other people. And I have a choice to be better to the average person than what I had been before, and that's kind of where I'm at in a personal level. Where I'm right now is that a lot of people disappoint me, a lot of people fail me. But if you look at my Dr. Hugh review, which was ahead of time, is that I talk a lot about this in my own personal struggle about how I feel regarding that. So definitely check out the end of the Dr. Who review if you haven't seen that, of my lessons there, because that really hit me where that needed to. But back to Click. So yeah, we talked about fast forwarding and how people want to fast forward through their lives. Absolute banger. Well done. They don't talk about the choices that people have as much, but it's definitely touched on and implied, and I wish there was a little bit more to that. And that really is one thing that makes this going from like grade S, and maybe, I don't know, I think this is like a B grade movie, truthfully. Rated out of F, right? This is probably like a high-end B movie, personally, for me. And this is probably the thing that actually keeps it out of the A category in full, is that there's some memes that there's some themes that it really touches on that it doesn't fully explore. And there's some drama that isn't hit on that it really doesn't explore. But the next part is it's looking in the mirror. And this is why I love these, and I've been holding this off because this is the end notes that I want to hit on. Is what happens when you look into the mirror? What happens if you're an old man, or an old person, or you're a young person? What happens whenever you're suddenly moved back in time or forward in time to examine yourself? You have to look in the mirror physically at... I'm going to talk about this movie, right? This is for younger people, and they're getting fast forward, and they're going to have to look at their life and the choices that they made that are coming up. And are you going to be happy with those choices? Are you going to be happy with who you ended up becoming? So I am going to be 30 this year. So assume for a second, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes. All right, all of a sudden I'm 60. I have 30 years of history catch up, but I'm starting to realize around me what choices I've made and where I went with it. Am I going to be happy? Am I going to be okay with who I am as a person and what I've demonstrated? Or do I want to fundamentally change the direction of my life, in my 30s? That's a huge one. That's absolutely massive and should be impactful for anyone and everyone. And I'd almost have to say you're soulless if it didn't hit you in some regard, because, a lot of people have... I think if you have any kind of quality at all, you've got to ask yourself, am I a good person? Am I doing the right thing? And looking in the mirror is the hardest thing that people have to do. My stuff backwards. I was wondering why it felt weird. Looking in the mirror is the hardest thing that people have to do. And I don't think a lot of people even do it at all, personally. And maybe that's why this movie isn't nearly as liked or reviewed or thought about as it should be. Is that, I get it. Looking in the mirror is painful. It's hard. You have to be honest with yourself. And a lot of people that, look in the mirror, put a mask on when they look in the mirror. And so they see what they want to see and not what's actually there. And you can see this on Facebook and Twitter, is that people will show their best, right? They'll be like, oh, hey, I got a new house, I got this car, I'm very proud of myself, my kids are doing great and all that. And you'll know because this person never shows any of the bad stuff. And I'm sure all of you have seen this where it's like, hey, you think this couple is the perfect couple. They've got a great life going for them. And literally you turn around one day and the news is out, they're getting divorced. And you're like, what the hell? Like, no way! And it's because people put on a mask. People put on fronts. And we see that, whether it's virtue signaling, whether we do all this, is that people have a hard time really, continue with who they are. And I think this actually is something that I really wish would be talked about in a newer movie or now, is how fake people are. But also how absolutely inhuman people are. And I mean, I'm going to do my rant again, but it's just, people don't really do a good job of convincing me of their humanity. It's very, people are very superficial. People are very unempathetic. And it's it's not just in the way they behave, but in the way that they go about their things. And it's, as an example, on the like the Twitch online space, right, that I'm known for running around in. How many times when you hear somebody's argument, you're like, oh, you're stupid, you don't know anything, you don't agree with me, so you're wrong. You see a lot of that. But what it really comes to is that how many people do you see where you hear an argument and you're like, all right, I empathize with that. I see where you're coming from. I'm going to give you some credit. I still don't agree with you, but I know. And I'm sure that's in every part of every person's life, is where is the empathy to understand where people are coming from, where people are, like what people are going through, the struggles, all of that. There's not a lot of that at all. And it's very saddening. And that it's just people are really bad about kind of convincing me of their own humanity. And that's why I keep people at such a distance for most of my life. And even today I have troubles, is that you don't see that. And so I am afraid, very much so, that the reason that this movie isn't remembered is because of that. People can't look in the mirror. One, because I don't know if they can, but they definitely don't want to. They don't want to empathize with others, and they sure as hell don't want to empathize with themselves. And the reason I think this is because this is my own moral ascription. I got to the point at one point where the right and good, right and wrong, good and evil, are really superficial concepts, because there's very few people that are really good people. There's very few people that are really bad people. A lot of people are shades of gray. A lot of people can't do the right thing all the time, or they're in positions where they, the impossible situations, right? I'll never really condemn a woman who is trying to feed her kids, who can barely put food on the table, for stealing. It's not right. I don't want my things taken from me, but on the other side of that is that I can't fault you for that. You're trying to take care of your own and do right by them, and it's your responsibility to the point where you'll commit actions that are not positive, that are not good for society as a whole, but you feel like you have to. And that's kind of where I kind of go off with a lot of these things. And I see people fall into camps that either the woman absolutely did the right thing, or the woman's a terrible, evil person. And that's where I lose it. It's like, it can be both. People can be both. People can be good and evil. And I'll just to show my own personal part, right? I'm not always very good to the average person, but if I think that you're better than the average person, I'll be incredibly loyal to you. I will be incredibly kind and friendly to you, and I will try to respect any and every boundary that you show me that you have. My goodness, if you will, comes out in a far more limited measure, but a far more powerful measure under that regard. I'm very happy for that. Like, I have a lot of compassion. I have a lot of empathy. I have a lot of these things that I think makes at least a better person. I just don't give it to as many people as I probably could. But on the other side of that is that I've got a lot of bad for me. I've hurt people solely for the fact of doing that on purpose. And that's, my, if you will, my sins that I have to address and deal with. And basically, I can't really make up for it. The only thing I can kind of do is forgive myself. And that is kind of where I'm at with a few things. Is that some of this is that I've realized I've done it, but I just haven't got to that phase. So, personal notes aside, because I talked about it, and the reason why I do this whole thing where I talk about me is that this is the story of what these things do. This is what stories do. This is what good movies, good media does, is that it makes you feel things, it makes you think things, and it makes you more of a person for having watched it. And that's largely what I grade these movies on, if anyone's actually asking. Like movies, TV shows, is that, does it elicit a thought from you? Does it make you think about some great things? I remember there was an excerpt from Star Trek just the other day that was going around the web about terrorism, because terrorism seems to be effective, but it's not good. And it's one of those things where, it doesn't actually hand you an answer. Oh yeah, terrorism bad or whatever. Or that you should never do that, because it talks about like the American Revolution and all these other events where violence was used for a better outcome. And these questions are fundamentally human. And that's what good sci-fi, good media is really good for, is that it's there to elicit emotions for you to empathize with people, to want to understand people better, or it makes you think about your own life and the way that you perceive things, and you go, okay, yeah, I need to think about this, or I need to readdress this, or what have you. That is what I judge my movies on, and that is what I judge my media on, is does it do stuff like that? Does it make me feel anything? Does it make me think about that? And so, yeah, that's been 50 minutes a click, believe it or not. I thank you all very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments down below. Definitely be involved. Chat's not been very active tonight. There's a big event going on Twitch Politics. I'm not going to talk about that here on the review. But, if you have any questions for me, I've got LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and pretty much any way that you want to contact me, largely. There's an avenue that you can explore down to, so you can say, like, hey, I think your reviews are good, or hey, I think your reviews are shit. Or, more importantly, what I'd really like to do is that if you have a certain way about feeling about these movies and TVs that I talk about, let me know what you felt. Let me know how you feel about them. Is Matt Smith your favorite doctor? That kind of thing. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you understand what I'm talking about, at least like, hey, I'm totally with you on that. I'd appreciate that. And if you want to check out my other content too, whether it's my politics or, getting into real issues with other people, you check out Geopolitics, Tyberius D. And you can check out Mask Off, which is all links down below. And if you really, really like what I do, you can help me out. I've got a Patreon. I have a tip donation link for Twitch, which will largely go through that, and it's largely supported by PayPal. Either of those would work very, very nicely. Or you can subscribe to me on Twitch. Any of these works. So yeah, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you like what I do, thank you very much for watching. Share it. If you like my work, definitely let other people know about it. Like, hey, yo, check out this review. Check out this. Check out this Twitch. Just hit that button. I definitely appreciate it. So, promos out of the way. I've been Tiberius D. Reviews with Tiberius D. This has been Click from 2006. Hope you have very much enjoyed it. I hope you all liked watching. And we'll catch you next time. Have a good one, guys.